Why did COVID become so political in the US? Compared to any other part of the world, the COVID-19 pandemic became a politically contested issue in the US, and often the truth was buried 18 feet under. It's a tragedy. The left and the right media made a scientific issue into a political fight, and have influenced the public, with their own biases. Science should be devoid of politics, especially on such an important health issue, like the COVID-19 pandemic, but it has been made into a dogfight, by those who are supposed to keep the people informed. We'll see why they did it, and how it affected people's understanding of the pandemic, its restrictions, and the medical treatments around it. Almost everything in the United States has been viewed with a distorted prism of media bias for a while, and the pandemic became one more item on the list of such distortions for the news media. The new coronavirus was identified in the city of Wuhan, a large metropolis, and the capital city of Hubei province of China. According to the World Health Organization, WHO, the first reported case of the novel coronavirus in Wuhan, China, was on the 31st of December 2019. However, WHO, and the Chinese government, had initially said that it was transmitted from bats to humans, and it's not transmissible from one human to another. The first controversy erupted when the President of the United States called the virus as Wuhan virus, and alternatively, China virus. Trump's intentions were not clear, but the media erupted into speculation that it was a racist comment. Very soon, people split along party lines, and the media fanned the flames, leading to hardening of positions. There were reported abuse against some people of Chinese heritage, though the number of such incidents were extremely low. It has to be noted that germs have been named after their location of origin in the past, and there was no public outcry against such names. The list is long, but we'll touch upon a few. The Ebola virus was named after the Ebola River in Africa. The Lyme disease was named after the city of Lyme, in the U.S. state of Connecticut. The West Nile virus was named after the West Nile River region. Zika was named after the Zika forest in Uganda. Middle Eastern respiratory syndrome, MERS, is named after the Middle East, and the last pandemic in 1918, the Spanish flu, was wrongly given a name Spanish flu, though its true origin was not Spain. People who were ideologically opposed to Trump argued that it's a bad idea to name the diseases based on the origin, because it stigmatizes people belonging to an entire community or country. However, when the variants of COVID-19 were found, they were named as UK variant, South African variant, and so on, until the hypocrisy was pointed out. The damage was already done, and the COVID-19 pandemic was now completely a political issue. Science, facts, and journalism didn't seem to matter. It's all about left versus right, and both tried to exaggerate their claims, and made America more and more divided. People around the globe relied on the World Health Organization for the accuracy of the data on this new virus. Let's look at some key timelines of what the WHO and the Chinese authorities told the world. The following data does exist in the WHO records and their own website. On the 4th of January 2020, WHO and China reported that there were no deaths, and there was a cluster of pneumonia cases. This was later learnt to be completely false. On the 14th of January 2020, WHO reported, preliminary investigations conducted by the Chinese authorities have found no clear evidence of human-to-human transmission. Of course, by this time, there was widespread human-to-human transmissions, leading to several deaths in Wuhan. On the 22nd of January 2020, WHO mission to China changed their position, though they were still unsure. Again, China had seriously downplayed the level of transmission, and the destruction COVID was causing in Wuhan. WHO claimed it had just relayed the information they received from China. By the 3rd of February 2020, the US had realized the importance of restricting travelers from China and Hong Kong. So, on that date, Trump issued restrictions on travel from China to the US. Trump had later claimed wrongly that he issued a travel ban. But, even the restrictions imposed by the US, was called by the then leading Democratic candidate, Joe Biden, as xenophobia. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi traveled to San Francisco Chinatown, on February 24, 2020, to show her solidarity with the victims of racism, as she called it, namely the ethnic Chinese community, and thereby, vitiated the restrictions, that were absolutely necessary, and made the restrictions into a political spectacle. When more actions were needed to be taken to stop the arrival of the Chinese into the US, the parties were quarreling, and losing sight of the problem. On their part, the Chinese had already imposed bans on the residents of Wuhan, to travel to the rest of China. The Wuhan residents were allowed to leave China, to other countries though. However, the US never got the message. The media didn't seem to care what was at stake, and who was right. They amplified their party's positions, and the genuine steps needed to address the spread of the pandemic, became a low priority. The people, who consumed the biased news, were turning equally blind to the task at hand, and made COVID-19 into a partisan fight. The next fight was over the scientific investigation, on the origins of COVID-19 virus. China had maintained, that the virus had jumped from a bat to humans, through an intermediate host, though it was never identified, or known. Since the Wuhan lab was dealing with novel coronaviruses, very similar to COVID-19, there was always a possibility, of the virus having leaked from the lab. Dr. Fauci, other medical professionals who worked with him, and some virologists claimed, that there is absolutely no possibility of a lab leak, and such nonsense needs to be taken down, from all outlets. Science is all about evidence, proof, and due diligence. Without these, science can never thrive, nor become universally accepted. But, the team led by Dr. Fauci, shut down all fact-finding expeditions, with full force. The social media giants, television media, major science and news publications, and most other outlets, were barred from publishing any theory, contrary to Dr. Fauci and his team's claims, on the origin of COVID-19. It took more than a year, until Nicholas Wade, a well-known author and journalist, who has previously worked as writer, and editor for Science, Nature, and the New York Times, published a detailed study on the origins of COVID, and explained, that the transmission from bats to humans had an extremely low likelihood, compared to the lab leak possibility, which was much more likely. He also pointed out, the conflict of interest that was existing in the team, that opposed the lab leak theory, because they were involved in creating these dangerous viruses, an experiment that had been widely supported by Dr. Fauci, since 2012. But, by then, Dr. Fauci was very much on the left wing of the media. He was used as the champion by the left-leaning media, to attack the Republican ideas on dealing with the pandemic. Of course, the Republicans had their own positions, spread by their own media, that didn't help the cause of confronting the pandemic either. By mid-2021, despite the revelations of the conflicts of interest, the team that shut the scientific investigations had to be supported, at all costs, by the Democrats and their section of the media, and the truth was never allowed to surface. The medical treatments for COVID became another partisan show. When the death toll mounted, the medical professionals, and the pharmaceutical industry, were under severe pressure, to try different medicine, to see if anything helps. The Chinese doctors had claimed that hydroxychloroquine, or HCQ, worked well with their patients, to bring down the fatalities. The medicos in the US, did believe the Chinese suggestions, and administered HCQ, in the early stage. Trump had jumped on this information, and claimed that HCQ is a miracle drug. When it was proven to be less effective, Trump still didn't change his mind, and the media, which opposed him, had a great opportunity, to make Trump look erratic, and unintelligent. Another drug, ivermectin, turned out to be controversial, quite unnecessarily. Ivermectin is used on humans for treating worms. Some doctors did believe ivermectin will work for treating COVID, but it was found later, not to be the case. After all, nobody knew what worked and what didn't. Everybody was just trying medicine that they believed will help. Many sections of the media wrongly claimed that ivermectin is a drug used only on animals. This deliberate misinformation was spread to make the Republicans look irrational, unscientific, and plain stupid. This misinformation was easily accepted and believed on the left, since some of the right-wing groups were making wild, unscientific claims as well. What made things worse was, 2020 happened to be the year of the US presidential elections, and there were billions of dollars spent by several sections, and there were allegations that the Chinese influenced the media, including the social media, though there was no direct evidence produced to support it. China is definitely a big beneficiary of muddying up the situation and creating arguments based on passion and not on substance. The quarrels within the US and other parts of the world helped China to make people forget the role China played in creating havoc all over the world. It's quite conceivable that several vested interests were at play here. They succeeded in making COVID-19 a partisan issue. Whatever may be the reasons, the pandemic of COVID-19 was covered with several misinformation, lies, misleading statements, deliberate diversion, unnecessary distraction, in the United States. The sheer hardening of positions, on both sides, on an issue that's supposed to be driven by facts, research and investigations, became a real tragedy. Let's try to end this on a positive note. By late 2021, there was some improvement among the warring parties. Two of the left-leaning hosts, Jon Stewart and Bill Maher, questioned the prevalent reporting by the left-leaning media. While Jon Stewart, appearing on a late-night show, wondered, why is it so hard to understand, COVID-19 is due to a lab leak, when the Wuhan labs were creating exactly the same type of virus, Bill Maher questioned, how can anyone say, holding China responsible was connected to racism, leading to a rethink on people's minds. There are some on the right too, who now prefer to seek the truth, instead of focusing on winning their arguments. There is also a growing belief based on the facts uncovered, that China has misled the world, though it will never be proven, with several influential institutions and people all around the world, under the Chinese influence. Thanks for watching.